last couple videos, you saw Bart had some small issues, I call them. Some of you may say, I think I remember seeing, oh my God, it went 7 track days and the engine blew up. Well, we had a mishap. It's nothing serious, and I'm gonna kind of show you what's going on. So, you saw a photo earlier in a video that Bart took of some piston damage. So now you can see a lot closer what's going on. Cylinder number 1, cylinder number 2. Yes, there's a problem. I don't call it a major problem. So you can see here, the aluminum obviously melted on the piston and curled up. Now, I think everybody can kind of gather what causes aluminum to twist like that. I can go into detail, but I think you can put that all together. And cylinder number 1, we got a nice layer of carbon, pretty thick. Some of it's a little bit flaking off here and there. No damage anywhere to the piston. Minor skirt marks, nothing to be real concerned about. Bart likes the 12,000 RPM thing going on. That's nothing wrong with that. It's a race motor, that's what it does. So, as you can see, when you compare 1 and 2, carbon to no carbon, we have a heat issue. We had enough heat that it literally took the carbon off the piston. When you have an engine tuned and you're doing stuff like this and you're shooting for individual cylinder tuning, you have to stop and think about a couple things. On a dyno, a motorcycle's not moving. And it's very difficult, except for one dyno out there that I know of, to recreate airflow through the front of the motorcycle. So when air is flowing through the front of the motorcycle, through the radiator, if you could picture it over the top of the cylinder head, down up by the air box, that is if the air box is in the back, okay? On some of your higher end race bikes, there's a pressure system coming into the air box called ram air, but we're not on that design. Now when the air flows through the radiator over the head and by the air box, the air-fuel ratio on the dyno may read a certain number. But you have to stop and think about what's going on down the racetrack, and Bart likes RPM ranges upwards of 12,000 RPMs on this little thing. And when you start adding in the speed of the motorcycle and the flow of the air around everything, your air-fuel ratio on the dyno may not be the same as it is going down the racetrack. So when you find a reputable dyno tuner, make sure that he might have that in his head, or you might want to have a conversation about that. And think about that when you're at home trying to learn this stuff too. Okay, now, what I'm going to do is kind of show you the engine. This is back to the beginning, if you can see here. We're back to clean engine cases. We're right back where we started. We did not have to go this far, okay? I'll tell all you viewers out there, there was really no reason, but we did this for 2 reasons. One, we're building confidence in the product, okay, that Bart came up with. It was his idea to try and shoot for 50 horsepower R3. I was excited about doing it, so I wanted to do a full inspection. In this full inspection, okay, you saw the crankshaft we originally put in. Well, there's the crankshaft, and I have done nothing to it when I pulled it out. We have the same polished journals, as you can see here. Rod journal, crankshaft case journal. Here and here, I kept one rod on, so you know what we're looking at. Now, I would say, in my personal opinion, this engine is holding up very well, okay? If you look at the rod and the rod bearings, the rod bearing to me is wearing fine. That is not a problem, okay? That is considered what we would call normal. It hasn't even barely broke through the first layer of material, which is minor. If I compare it to a new rod bearing, you're fine. So I'd say there's a lot of confidence in the bottom end of this motor. It's holding up good. The oil quality we're using is good. Okay, it's holding up to the way Bart rides the bike. So when I pull a crankshaft out and it's still polished and the journals still look like this, I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that. You know, as you can see, case-wise, we're fine. Now, if we look at the crank bearings, I see no issues in crank bearings. I don't like to touch the center of the crank bearing with my finger because there's new ones going back in. This is the crank bearing that came out after Bart's usage of the motor so far. This is a new one. I don't see a problem here. You viewers at home that are looking at the internal parts of engines regular basis, I'd say we're doing fine. Our clearances came out good. I'm not going to give the clearance away we're running. It might not be exactly to the manual. Everything's working the way it should be though. So I have a lot of confidence in this. With the RPMs he's running, I am more than happy with it. So things are doing well here. None of the material on the piston worked its way down to the bottom, so we're good. Now, if you look at the Greg Spears transmission, okay, Greg Spears did these transmissions for TST. We're good. There's nothing going on here that's upsetting me in any way. Nice and solid. Again, the high quality oil makes a big difference, okay? Now, Greg Spears back cut these dogs and slots a little bit so the tranny was smoother. I'm comfortable with that. Again, we're running ceramic bearings. Ceramic bearings are holding up great. So remember guys, it's a race engine. It's not a street engine. On the street, it would probably live a lifetime. On the racetrack, small mishap, I wanted to see what's going on all the way down to the bottom end. So that's what we did. Okay, from what I can see overall, one thing I did find that I'd like to show you guys that are getting into this is we have this clutch here. Okay, I'm not upset with this. If you look closely, you can see some major serious bluing on the steel plates in the clutch. Now, for some of you guys that are new at this and are learning, a clutch has a fiber, a steel, a fiber, and a steel, and so on when you build it. Well, okay. We don't have a lot of time on it. I feel we have a substantial amount of time considering the way the bike has been ridden. Nothing wrong with that. It's being rode like a race bike. But we do have some clutch bluing, some heat going on. I don't find this anything to be concerned about, okay? Not a big deal. I think Bart's running, if I remember correctly, electric shifter, ignition kill system. He also has a slipper clutch. If you guys remember in the first video, we're running a yo-yo dyne system, okay? Remember when you're running a slipper clutch, you might see this. I'm not overly concerned about it. You guys that are on the racetrack all the time and running higher horsepower 300s, it's a problem, okay? I don't call it a problem that I would be concerned about. I call it something that's called maintenance. And maintenance with race bikes, it's normal, okay guys? Not a big deal, like I said, maintenance. If you're gonna ride it like a race bike, maintain it like a race bike, okay? Are these no good? I would say no. This could be cleaned up. This steel plate could be cleaned up and probably put in and ran a couple more track days. And then you'd want to start measuring thickness of the frictions, okay? And seeing where you're at with your thickness compared to your service manual and make a decision, okay, these things are wore out, it's time for another clutch. Clutches are cheap, okay, viewers out there? Not that big a deal on a race bike. Keep that in mind. So another thing I found, nothing major. I don't see any warpage in the plates, okay? Bart's not destroying anything. This is normal. He's a racer. Okay, so we're back to the beginning, guys. You've seen this in a video once. This is the R3 cylinder head, okay, the Superbike head. I cleaned the cylinder head, but I won't lie to you, there wasn't much to clean. It was pretty clean when I took it apart. The ported head, the smoother surfaces are allowing the carbon not to stick to the head as much, okay? So I didn't do a lot of cleaning here. I cleaned the gasket surface off a little bit, but for the most part, there was minimal attachment of carbon anywhere in the head. That's the nice part about porting, okay? So the only thing on the head you may see, you viewers on the outside, is right here. We have a little bit of aluminum stuck to it. That's from the number 2 piston coming apart. That's minor, no big deal. We can get that cleaned off. Pretty simple task, okay? Now, I like the wear on the valve seats, okay? Here, I like the wear on the valves. Now again, this is a race motor, okay? This is not going down the road at 60 miles an hour. Bart drives this engine, okay? 11, 12,000 RPM shifts, top end on the back straights, okay? Valve wear, I'm pretty happy with, okay? There are some alternatives to this. Maybe getting the valves Stellite coated. Stellite coating is a high temperature heat coating that helps maintain the surface consistency of the valve better. Okay, but for the most part, we have good valve wear. I know we don't have a lot of time on the motor, but you have to consider the amount of track days it went through and the RPM range that it ran at. Okay, these valves will be fine for the rest of the season all the way into Daytona. Okay, and then we'll replace them this winter and we'll start over. That's normal maintenance on a race bike on a small engine like this. Why we're talking about valves, valve springs, guys. For you guys that are venturing into this at home, valve springs, cheap replacement part, okay? Valve springs take a lot of heat. Think about what they're doing in their action all the time, compressing and unloading, compressing, unloading. But stop and think about, and you can Google this, piston speed compared to what that valve's doing, okay, all the time, and then think about that spring that's taking that kind of beating. So keep that in mind. Valve springs are cheap, guys. On a race bike, I would say once a year. If you can get through that first season and you're only a track day guy, maybe every second season, put new valve springs in your head, okay? They get sacked out, they get angled, they get worn, okay? Replace them, they're cheap. Cheap part, and it actually makes good horsepower on a dyno. So keep that in mind. Okay, so now what we're gonna talk about, a few things for you viewers out there that are doing this at home. What are we doing, okay, to kind of fight the problem that we had? Well, this is not an R3 cylinder, okay? This is a Honda Motocross 450 dirt bike cylinder. So if you guys research a substance called Nikka SIL, okay, we're having Millennium Technologies do some Nikka SIL on the R3 cylinder block. And for you guys that aren't sure what Nikka SIL is, you can look into it a little bit, you can Google it, and it's been around since 1987, 88. Kawasaki brought it into the motocross industry early. Nikka SIL is a coating, okay, that is put on the cylinder. They use positive, negative charge in a liquid to do it. You can research that. And the Nikka SIL can handle more heat. One of the main reasons they do it, okay? And that's what we're going for. We're gonna try to protect the cylinders more. Bart was in 100-degree air temperatures, not far from here up in Georgia, 100-degree air temperature. So you have to stop and think about what that engine's going through, okay? So we're Nikka SIL in the cylinders. That's the first step. We're gonna get the piston cylinder clearance sized up there. They're doing it with the Nikka SIL. It's gonna come back diamond honed, ready to go. It's a beautiful piece of artwork, okay, when you guys see it. First thing we're doing. Second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna change our coolant and our radiator. Probably gonna go to Evans coolant. We're gonna work on that. The Evans coolant has a high boilover point. I think it's 365, but don't hold me to that, okay? The other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna change the radiator cap. Now, some of you guys are probably do some research and go, hey, I can't always find radiator caps for my street bike. And you can use an off-road dirt bike radiator cap. It's the same. Now, you'll notice on the radiator cap, yours might say 1.1 bar, okay? This one's a 1.8 bar. It's equivalent to what KTM uses on their motocross bikes. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna up it to a 1.8 bar probably. We're gonna work with 1.1 to a 1.4, 1.6, 1.8. We're gonna decide what works. But when we raise the pressure in the radiator, we're trying to raise the boil point of the coolant. And that's our other plan. We've also looked at the water pump a little bit. We're looking into maybe altering the water pump, maybe pulling one out of a motocross engine. Not a stock one, maybe looking in the Boysen, for instance. It's a possibility. Some of the motocross water pumps, they're actually pretty close to the same, and we may be able to adapt that in. And we're looking for a little more coolant speed, okay, out of the water pump. But between all of these things, and if I remember correctly, Bart was looking into an oil cooler. Oil cooler would be nice too. Some bikes come with it, some bikes don't, but in this case, an oil cooler would be very beneficial to bring the oil temperature maybe down 5-10 degrees. We're trying to stabilize that engine. So these are all the things we're gonna do to try and pull our engine temperatures down a little bit. And last but not least, our air-fuel ratio is going to be altered a little bit on cylinder 2, for sure. Okay, we've learned something between these 2 cylinders when we tune them individually. Okay guys, here's a little teaser for the next video coming out. So here's our Superbike cylinder head, ported, all done, okay? This is when we just took it off the bike. Here's another head we have. So you'll see the surface is pretty shiny. We actually had this thing cut down, quite a bit of material shaved off. What we're building is compression, more. We're already playing with over 200 pounds of compression in this motor. That's quite a bit for a little R3. So we're gonna step it up again. We're gonna start altering to full race fuel, step the compression up quite a bit. We're gonna use the same thin head gasket we're running. We do have enough piston to valve clearance to do this. We actually have plenty. And don't forget, we're running those Carrillo rods, guys. And those Carrillo rods, we don't get the same stretch out of a Carrillo rod we do out of a stock bike like Alex is riding, okay? So we're not so concerned about growth, expansion under heat. So stay tuned for the next video coming out, because we'll discuss more how this worked out and what's going on. But we want our compression numbers to go way over 200. And as you guys know, compression is horsepower. Okay guys, I think I pretty much covered everything. If you guys have any questions, if you guys have anything you want to go in deeper about, maybe you can comment on the YouTube video. I'll go on and comment if it's something related, and I'll try and help you out. And I guess we're gonna see you the next episode when Bart's out riding this thing again.